What would you do if a week before your wedding, a total stranger grabbed your wrist and begged you to hide? Would you pull away and call her crazy? Would you smile politely and walk on like nothing happened? Or would you listen to that tiny, trembling voice inside you you've been whispering for months, something's not right? Have you ever felt that? That knot in your stomach you keep blaming on stress or planning or cold feet, when deep down you know it's fear. Fear that you're about to give your whole life, your savings, your body, your future to someone who might not be who they say they are. Fear that you're going to end up humiliated, abandoned, or worse, starting over from zero when everyone thought you were finally winning at life. That was me. 6 days before my wedding, I walked into a restaurant to finalize the rehearsal dinner and walked right into the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I remember the exact feeling of the door handle in my hand. It was one of those heavy glass doors with a brass bar, cool and smooth under my fingers. I pushed it open with my left hand, my engagement ring catching the light and throwing tiny sparks across the dark glass. For a second, seeing that ring shine, I told myself, "You did it. You're finally here. One more errand, then it's all going to come together." I'd been rehearsing a little script in my head during the drive over. Be polite, don't talk too fast, smile, don't let your voice get too loud, don't come off as demanding, don't be that bride. I had notes on the menu open on my phone, gluten-free options for my cousin, no shellfish near my mom, extra potatoes because his family loves carbs. My brain was juggling 100 small details. At the same time, underneath all of that noise, there was this dull, constant ache in my chest I'd been pretending not to feel. "Hi, welcome in," a bright voice called as the door closed behind me. I didn't even look up at first. I was scrolling through my reminders, thinking about the seating chart, worrying about whether my dress would be ready on time, and trying so hard to shove down that tiny, nagging thought I refused to name. The thought that said, "What if you're making a mistake?" I had one foot inside the restaurant when it happened. A hand closed around my wrist. Not rough, not painful, but firm. Intentional, like someone catching you right before you step into traffic. I froze and snapped my head up. There she was, a waitress. Dark hair scraped back to a tight bun, black apron tied around her waist, pen tucked behind her ear. I had never seen this woman in my life, but the way she was looking at me, her eyes were too wide, like she'd just seen something terrible and only had seconds to warn me. Before I could open my mouth, she leaned in so close I could feel the warmth of her breath against my ear and whispered, "Hide quick and just watch." I actually let out this short, confused laugh. "Excuse me?" Her fingers tightened on my wrist, just a little, enough to let me know she was serious. Her voice dropped even lower. "Please, I don't have time to explain. Just hide behind the divider at the back and watch. Trust me." Have you ever had your body recognize danger before your mind catches up? My heart plummeted straight into my stomach. My skin went cold, even though the restaurant was warm and smelled of garlic and butter and wine. My brain scrambled for explanations. Is there some kind of surprise happening? Is this a prank? Is someone in trouble? Is he in trouble? That was my first clear thought. Is something wrong with him? Is he hurt? Is someone after him? Then, like a second wave crashing over the first, another thought slammed into me. What if this is about me? What if I'm about to find out something I can't unsee? What if this is the moment everything changes and I won't be able to go back to pretending? I pulled my hand back a little, instinctively trying to reclaim some control. "Why would I do that?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice calm, light, harmless. As a Black woman, you learn early that the difference between concerned and angry in other people's eyes is about 2 decibels and a raised eyebrow. I didn't want to give her any reason to shut down or call me aggressive. Her eyes flicked over my shoulder towards the entrance, like she was checking to see if someone had followed me in. "Because he's coming," she whispered, urgency pressed into every word. He. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What do you mean, see him the way you see him? Her face softened for a hot second, like she felt sorry for me and wished she didn't have to be the one to do this. Look, she said, glancing back towards the host stand where another server was starting to notice her absence. You can walk in there and pretend today is just about the menu and the chairs and the candles. You can keep your picture-perfect week going. Or you can hide for 5 minutes and finally know the truth. After that, whatever you decide to do is your choice, but at least you'll know. 5 minutes. It sounded tiny and huge at the same time. What could possibly happen in 5 minutes that would justify this? What could I see that would be bad enough for a stranger to risk her job warning me? I thought about my fiancé's face the day he proposed, how he smiled like I was the only woman in the room, even though we were in a crowded restaurant. I thought about the times I'd reached for his phone and he'd casually, playfully, but very quickly moved it away. Private work stuff, babe. Boring. You don't want to see this. I thought about the nights he came home late, smelling of cologne I didn't recognize, brushing it off as clients and networking. I thought about the way my best friend had raised an eyebrow when I told her how fast we got engaged, then bit her tongue when she saw how defensive I got. I also thought about numbers, cold, hard ones, the $32,000 I had already put down in deposits and purchases, my savings account almost drained, the extra shifts I'd taken, the credit card balances I told myself I'd pay off after the honeymoon, the dream dress hanging in my closet, the flights my family had booked, the group chat titled Wedding Weekend that lit up my phone constantly with dress pictures and heart emojis. Have you ever stayed in something because the cost of backing out seemed higher than the cost of staying hurt? She must have seen all that flash across my face because her expression turned even urgent. Please, she said again, her voice cracking just slightly this time. If I'm wrong, you can tell my manager I harassed you. You can write a review, get me fired, whatever. But if I'm right, she swallowed. If I'm right, you do not want to find out after you say I do. After you say I do. My throat tightened. Those 3 words suddenly sounded less like a promise and more like a trap. I glanced past her into the dining room. There was a wooden divider near the back, dark wood with slats and frosted glass, separating the main space from a cozier area they use for private parties. I knew that section. I'd picked it out from photos. It's where our rehearsal dinner was supposed to be. I'd imagined fairy lights, flowers, him sitting next to me with his hand resting on my back, everyone we loved gathered around us, laughing. My hand was shaking now. I tucked it against my side so she wouldn't see. What is this about? I whispered, one last fragile attempt to get a straight answer before I stepped off whatever cliff this was. She looked me dead in the eyes. It's about him not being who you think he is. Then someone at the host stand called her name. She flinched. Back there, she said quickly, nodding towards the divider. On the right side, there's a gap between the panels. You'll be able to see the table. Just don't let him see you, and record if you can. Record if you can. The words hit me like a splash of ice water. This wasn't some vague, emotional, you need to know the truth. This sounded like evidence. This sounded like she fully expected my world to explode. I could have walked out right then. I want you to understand that. The door was 3 steps behind me. My car was in the parking lot. I could have turned around, gone home, and clung to my pretty little fantasy for 6 more days. I could have chosen not to know. Not yet. Have you ever been so scared of the answer that you almost refused to ask the question? I took a breath that didn't really fill my lungs. My feet felt heavy and hollow at the same time. But they moved. I walked past the host stand, pretending to study my phone so no one would notice how rigid my shoulders were. The restaurant buzzed softly around me, clinking glasses, low music, murmured conversations. All of it felt far away, like I was walking through a movie about someone else's life. When I reached the divider, I slipped behind it like I belonged there. On the right side, just like she'd said, there was a narrow vertical gap between two wooden panels, maybe an inch or two wide. From there, I could see into the private dining area. Beyond the gap, a round table was set for four, white linen pressed crisp and clean, wine glasses catching the overhead light. A small, reserved sign sat near the edge. For a second, I pictured the future I'd been holding on to with white knuckles, candles, toasts, my fiancé's hand covering mine on that exact table. I checked my phone. 2 minutes had passed since I walked in. 5 minutes, she'd said. 5 minutes that might rearrange everything. I could still leave. I thought about just stepping out from behind the divider, acting like I'd been looking for the bathroom and asking to speak to the manager about the rehearsal dinner. I thought about smiling, choosing not to look too closely at anything that might hurt. I thought about meeting my fiancé that night, letting him kiss my forehead, tucking myself into the little story I'd been telling myself about us. But that tiny voice inside me, the one I'd been shoving into the darkest corner for months, was finally screaming too loud to ignore. What if this is the only warning you get? What if this is your chance to stop repeating the same heartbreak you watched your mother go through? Have you ever known, deep down, under all the excuses, that you're standing at a crossroads you'll remember for the rest of your life? I slid my phone into my hand, thumb hovering over the camera icon, just in case. My pulse thudded in my ears. I heard the front door chime. Open, close. Soft footsteps. Then his laugh. That easy, familiar, charming laugh. The one that had made me feel special the first night we met. The one I'd replayed in my head on lonely nights, convincing myself that this time, this man was different. My whole body went still. I leaned closer to the gap in the divider, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it almost hurt. And then I saw him. His shoulders, his profile, the way he walked, casual and confident, like he owned every room he entered. He moved toward the table I'd been staring at for weeks in my imagination. But he wasn't alone. He wasn't alone. A woman walked in beside him, just a step behind, like she was used to following his lead. She was pretty, of course she was pretty, wearing a soft, fitted dress and low heels, the kind of outfit you choose when you want to look nice for someone, not just for yourself. Her hair was done, her makeup was on. This wasn't some random lunch. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back as he guided her toward the table, that tiny, familiar gesture. The same way he always touched me when we entered a room together, like I was his and he was proud to be next to me. My stomach twisted so fast I thought I might be sick. Every part of me wanted to slam the divider aside, march over there and demand, "Who is she?" But my feet were glued to the floor. Instead, I watched him pull out a chair for her like a perfect gentleman, smiling in that way that made dimples appear at the corners of his mouth. The same smile he used on me when he told me I was the best thing that ever happened to me. She laughed at something he said as she sat down. He leaned in, too close for just friends, no awkward hesitations, no polite distance. Have you ever watched someone you love move their hands, their face, their body exactly the way they do with you, but on somebody else? It's like seeing your favorite song playing in the wrong room. He sat down across from her, and the angle of the table blocked some of my view. I couldn't see their faces clearly from the gap, but I could see enough. The way his shoulders relaxed, the way he picked up the menu with one hand and rubbed his thumb over her fingers with the other. The kind of absent, intimate contact that only comes from familiarity. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe this is a client dinner. Maybe she's just a coworker. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe the waitress is wrong. Maybe I should just step out, say, "Hey, babe," and watch his face. Maybe I should give him the benefit of the doubt. Again. Have you ever been so used to making excuses for someone that your first instinct is to protect them from your own suspicions? As I stood there, paralyzed behind that divider, my brain did something weird. Instead of staying in that moment, it started flipping back through time, like someone scrolling through old photos too fast. Each memory was sharp and painful, but I couldn't stop it. The first time I saw him, he was standing at the bar at a friend's birthday party, laughing at some joke I couldn't hear. I remember noticing his watch, his clean shoes, the way he kept checking on the person he was talking to, like he really cared what they were saying. Later, that night, he found his way over to me. "You've been hiding in this corner all night," he teased. "I thought I should come rescue you from your phone." I rolled my eyes, but I laughed. Who said I wanted to be rescued? He smiled, then let me rephrase. "Can I join you in your corner?" It felt easy, comfortable, like he saw me in a way other men didn't, not as an accessory, not as someone to impress, but as a person he wanted to understand. At least, that's what I told myself. He said all the right things, that he loved how driven I was, that he respected my boundaries, that he admired how hard I'd worked to build the life I had. "You're the kind of woman a man marries," he said once, trace of awe in his voice, "not the kind he wastes time with." Do you know what it's like as a Black woman to hear that? To have someone call you marriage material instead of too much, too loud, too intimidating, too independent? I had spent years watching men chase after women who were nothing like me, then come back to me when they wanted advice, comfort, stability, but never commitment. I had been the cool friend, the therapist, the backup plan. Never the main event. Until him. Or so I thought. He moved fast, but not too fast, just fast enough to feel romantic instead of reckless. Weekend trips, introducing me as his girlfriend within a month, meeting his family in 3. The proposal came not long after our 1-year anniversary in a nice restaurant with violin music and a ring that sparkled half as much as his smile. I remember crying, laughing, saying yes while people clapped. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the story I get to tell my kids one day, that after all the heartbreak, someone finally chose me and only me. So when my best friend said, "Don't you think this is a lot really quickly?" I brushed her off. "You just don't know him like I do. He's different." When my mom frowned slightly at the engagement party and asked, "Baby, are you sure he's the one?" I smiled and told her I've never been more sure of anything. She didn't push. She just said, "Okay, I'm behind you, but listen to your gut. Don't ignore it like I did with my father." I promised I would. I lied. Not on purpose, not in a malicious way, but in all the little ways you lie to yourself when you're more in love with the future than the reality in front of you. The first red flag was small. He would always put his phone face down on the table. Not just with me, with everyone. "Habit from work," he explained. "Clients, NDAs, confidential stuff. You don't want to see what's on here. It's just boring numbers and contracts anyway." I believed him, because I wanted to. Many things added up. He never posted me on his social media. "I like my privacy," he said. "Also, my ex was weird online after we broke up, so I'd rather keep us off there. You know how people are." It sounded reasonable. Most of the time he was attentive, sweet. He texted good morning, he showed up when I was sick with soup and Netflix, he called to say goodnight if he was traveling. But sometimes there would be gaps, whole evenings where he was in meetings and not reachable. Occasional weekends where plans with me became, "Sorry, babe, this client is freaking out. I have to fix this or we're both going to be eating ramen." He framed it like us against the world, like he was working this hard for our future. And who was I to argue with a man who kept telling me, "I just want to give you the life you deserve"? Have you ever been confused by being kept in the dark with being protected? Money became a blurry line. I earn my own. I always have. I watched my mother count every dollar, stretch every paycheck, pick up extra shifts while my father chased dreams that never paid bills. I swore I'd never end up depending on a man. So I built my savings, my credit, my just-in-case fund. When we started planning the wedding, he told me, "I'm a little tight this quarter because I'm investing a lot back into the business, but once these contracts close, it's going to be crazy. For now, can you cover most of the deposits? I'll reimburse you. We're a team, right?" Those words, "we're a team," hit all my soft spots. I wanted that. I wanted a partner, not a provider. And it made me feel capable to say, "I got it, don't worry." So I paid the venue deposit, the photographer, the dress, the decorator. I put the rehearsal dinner on my credit card, planning to move it once his big check came through. Every time I mentioned the growing total, he'd pull me close, kiss my forehead, and say, "You're saving me, you know that. I love how you've got us. When this all evens out, I'm going to spoil you so bad." It sounded like a promise. It was an investment, but not the kind I thought. Now, standing behind that wooden divider, watching him sit at a table that was supposed to be part of our love story, my mind finally let all those memories stack on top of each other, not as random moments, but as a pattern. He leaned forward to say something to the woman across from him. She smiled shyly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He reached across the table and touched her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles in that soothing, possessive way I knew too well. She didn't pull away. She curled her fingers around his. What would you feel in that moment? Rage? Numbness? I felt split. Half of me was screaming, "See? This is it. This is what you've been afraid of. You knew." The other half clung desperately to any alternative. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Even as my heart cracked, some stubborn part of me refused to accept that I could be that wrong about someone I was about to marry. The waitress appeared at their table, pad in hand, face carefully neutral. She glanced quickly toward my divider, so fast that anyone else would have missed. But I saw. She knew I was watching. She asked them what they wanted to drink. He ordered her favorite wine, not mine, not his usual, hers. He knew exactly what to say, exactly what she liked. How many times had they been here before? My hand was shaking so badly now that when I opened my phone's camera, I nearly dropped it. I switched to video, thumb hovering over the record button. But something stopped me for a second. I thought about my mother again, about the day my father left for a few weeks to clear his head and never really came back. About how she pretended everything was fine for months before that, smiling at church, keeping up appearances, dying slowly behind her eyes. About the night I overheard her crying in the bathroom, whispering, "I should have left when I first saw the messages. I should have believed myself." I remember promising myself as a teenager, sitting on the other side of that door, that won't be me. I won't be the woman who pretends not to see. And yet here I was, 1 week from my own wedding, hiding behind a divider, trying desperately not to connect the dots I'd drawn myself. Have you ever realized you became exactly the thing you swore you'd never be? I closed my eyes for a second, took a breath that trembled, then I hit record. The screen lit up silently, capturing them as they leaned closer over the table, their mouths moving, their hands touched. He reached across and with gentle familiarity laid his palm on her stomach. Her stomach? That's when I noticed it. Not much, just the slightest curve under her dress, like she'd had a big lunch, or like she was a few months pregnant. My heart stopped mid-beat. My phone almost slipped from my fingers. I switched to Zoom, just a little, my breath stuck in my throat as his hand stayed there, on that curve, his thumb rubbing slow circles over it, his face soft and proud. I couldn't hear his words yet, but in that gesture alone, in the way she looked down at his hand and smiled like she was holding the sun inside her, I knew. Whatever I'd been hoping this was, a misunderstanding, a business meeting, a platonic lunch, it wasn't that. This was something else, something worse, something that was about to make cheating sound almost simple. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. His hand, her stomach, that soft, intimate touch I had never seen him give anyone but me. Not a friend, not a coworker, not a client. This was different. This was private. I zoomed in a little more, my thumb barely steady enough to move. Through the tiny gap in the divider, they both came into clearer focus. Her face glowed in that way women do when they're carrying something precious and fragile inside them. His eyes were focused on her like nothing else in the room existed. My chest went tight, like an invisible band had wrapped around my ribs and started to squeeze. It felt like there wasn't enough air in the restaurant anymore, like I was breathing through a straw. Have you ever watched your life split in half in the span of a heartbeat? One half is the story you've been telling everyone, the one with the Pinterest boards and the color schemes and the hashtags. The other half is the raw, ugly truth you never wanted to admit was possible. He leaned closer to her, his voice low. I strained to hear, but only caught fragments at first, muffled by the clink of plates and distant conversations. I inched my ear closer to the gap, my phone still recording, my other hand braced against the wood to keep myself from collapsing. Getting so big, he murmured, a note of wonder in his voice. I swear, every time I see you, it's like you're more... He trailed off, but the smile on his face finished the sentence for him. She laughed softly, resting her own hand over his. You say that every time, she teased. You're going to make me cry in public. He shook his head, eyes shining. I'm serious. You're glowing, baby. Baby. My stomach heaved. I clamped my lips shut, biting the inside of my cheek hard. I tasted blood. Baby. Not as in, hey baby, how was your day? The way he said it now was different, reverent, like the word itself held a whole future inside it. She glanced around, then leaned in too, lowering her voice. I still can't believe this is happening, she whispered. Us, a baby, after everything. He squeezed her hand. I told you, he said, we're going to be fine. You and our baby are my real future. You know that. Our baby. My fingers tightened around my phone until my knuckles burned. Have you ever been so shocked that your body literally goes cold? Like your blood retreats to some hidden place and leaves you there, hollow and buzzing? In that moment, I didn't feel like a person. I felt like an audience member watching the worst play in the world, unable to get up from my seat. I wanted to scream, to tear the divider down, to grab him by the collar and make him look at me. I wanted to grab her shoulders and ask, do you know who I am? Do you know there's a ring on my finger with his name on it? But my feet didn't move, not 1 inch. More words floated back to me, each one like a tiny hammer hitting the glass of my reality. I just hate sneaking around like this, she said quietly. I don't like feeling like a secret, especially now. He sighed, rubbing his thumb over her hand again. I know, he said. I hate it too, but it's only for a few more days. A few more days. My wedding was in 6. A ringing started in my ears. I pressed my back harder against the divider to stay upright. She looked at him, confusion knitting her brow. A few more days? He nodded. Once the wedding is over and everything goes through, it'll be easier to maneuver. Right now, too many eyes are on us. Her friends, her family, vendors, all that. If I blow things up before, it's going to get messy. I need it to be clean. Her? Her friends? Her family? He was talking about me like a project plan, an obstacle to be maneuvered. A part of me wanted to stop listening, to shut my ears, delete the video, and run. But another part of me, some deep, furious, wounded part, leaned in closer instead. Have you ever forced yourself to look at something you knew would destroy you, just so no one could ever say you didn't know? The waitress, my unexpected guardian angel in an apron, appeared at their table again with a small basket of bread. She set it down, moving a little slower this time, giving herself an excuse to linger, within earshot. As she straightened up, she shifted slightly, creating a clearer line of sight for me through the gap. Our eyes met for the briefest second. She couldn't see me fully, but she knew I was there. She gave the tiniest nod, like, keep listening, don't look away. Then she spoke, voice light. Have you both decided on your drinks? The other woman smiled. Just water for me, please. She rested her hand on her stomach again. No wine for us for a while. Us. I felt my heart take another blow. He smiled at her. I'll have a whiskey, he said. Neat. The waitress wrote it down, then turned away. As she did, she casually brushed her hand along the top of the divider near where I was hiding, as if wiping a spot. Under her breath, so low no one but me could hear, she whispered, breathe, keep recording. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath until then. I dragged air into my lungs, shaky and thin, and tightened my grip on my phone. He leaned forward again, lowering his voice. This time, the noise in the restaurant dipped just enough for his words to carry clearly. Listen, he said, I know this is uncomfortable, but think about what we're going to have once this is done. I told you, I've got it under control. The accounts will merge, the investments will be in my name, and then we'll really be able to start our life. Accounts, merge, investments in his name? His name, my money. I felt something sharp twist inside me. She bit her lip. I just don't like the way you talk about it sometimes, she said cautiously. It feels, I don't know, icky, like you're using her. I don't want to feel like I'm part of something wrong. I hated her for half a second, and then, irrationally, I didn't, because for the first time since I'd seen her, I heard uncertainty in her voice, guilt. She wasn't gloating, she was worried. He leaned across the table, catching her gaze. Hey, he soothed. Don't do that. You're not doing anything wrong. She's not going to get hurt. She gets what she wants. Her big fairy tale wedding, the pictures, the dress, the I finally got a ring moment. She's been dreaming about this for years. Trust me, she's happy. He laughed lightly. She loves paying for things anyway. Makes her feel in control. The words hit me so hard I had to press my fist against my own mouth to keep from making a sound. She loves paying for things, makes her feel in control. Is that what he thought? That I was happily funding my own humiliation? That I enjoyed emptying my savings and swiping my card because it made me feel powerful? Have you ever realized that the version of you that lives in someone else's head is not only wrong, but insulting? The woman across from him frowned. Still, you're literally marrying her. He shrugged, like she'd mentioned the weather. On paper, yeah, but that's just a step. That's all this is, a step, a way to get where we need to go. Once everything is sorted, I'll file and cleanly separate. No drama. I've already looked into it. Worst case, she gets some alimony out of it. That would be like a thank you gift for the investment, right? He smirked at his own joke. My fingers went numb. He was talking about marrying me like a business transaction, like a short-term loan he had to sign paperwork for, like I was a bridge he needed to cross to get to the real life he wanted, with her and their baby. I felt the urge to scream rising from somewhere deep in my belly, pushing up against my throat. I imagined leaping over the divider, flipping the table, shattering every calm expression in that room. My vision swam for a second.
I had to blink hard to clear it. Have you ever been so angry that your body literally shook but you stayed perfectly still because moving would mean exploding? She looked unconvinced. I don't want to be the other woman, she said quietly. I didn't sign up to be a homewrecker. I thought you said you were done with her, that you were just tying up loose ends. He reached out, catching her chin with his fingers, tipping her face up to his. His voice softened. Look at me, he said. You are not a homewrecker. There is no home to wreck. There's just a ceremony and some paperwork. That relationship is over. She just doesn't know it yet. Over. She just doesn't know it yet. I had the absurd thought that I might actually die right there behind a restaurant divider from sheer shock and humiliation. My ring felt like it weighed 5 pounds on my finger. I stared at it, at the way it glittered faintly in the dim light seeping through the gap, and for the first time, it looked less like a promise and more like a joke. But the baby, she began, is our future.
he finished. And that's why I need to be smart. Babies are expensive. You know that. You've seen the numbers. I can't walk away from the financial foundation that's right in front of me. He leaned back, casually resting his arm on the back of his chair. She has good credit, decent savings, and she's already paying for most of the wedding. She's generous, and she hates looking cheap. All I had to do was frame it as us being a team, and she stepped right up. No questions. He chuckled. Honestly, it's easier than I thought it'd be. I was worried she'd be high maintenance when we met. Strong woman, independent, whole speech about not needing a man. You know the type. But she's been surprisingly compliant, as long as I say the right things. You know the type. Strong, independent, doesn't need a man. Said like an eye roll, like a challenge he'd taken on as a game. My throat burned. I thought about all the times I'd carefully expressed a boundary, but then softened it because I didn't want to be seen as difficult. All the times I'd swallowed my discomfort and told myself, he's trying, don't make a fuss. I thought I was being understanding, supportive, low drama. He heard compliant. She sighed. I'm scared, she admitted. What if she finds out before? What if she ruins everything? I watched his jaw tighten for a fraction of a second, then relax again. She won't, he said confidently. She trusts me. That's the thing about women like her. They're so afraid of ending up alone that once they believe they found the one, they see what they want to see, not what's in front of them. He grinned like he'd just delivered a clever punchline. Fear is the best glue. Fear is the best glue. Have you ever heard someone summarize your deepest insecurity in one cruel little sentence and use it as a strategy? I wanted to scream, I'm not afraid of being alone. But as soon as the words formed in my head, I knew they'd be a lie. I thought about all the years I'd watched other people get engaged, married, have kids, post gushy anniversary messages. I thought about the panic that rose in my chest every time another year passed, and I was still sending +1 TBD on RSVP cards. I thought about how intoxicating it felt when he chose me, quickly, decisively. How I'd clung to that like proof that I was worthy, that I was lovable, that I hadn't missed my chance. I was afraid, not of being alone in a room. I liked my own company. I was afraid of being left behind, afraid of being the strong black woman people admired but never built a life with. My fear had glued me to him, and he knew it. He took a sip of the water the waitress had placed before him. Look, he said, tone shifting back to practical. In less than a week, we'll be on the other side of this. She'll be busy posting ring selfies and I married my best friend captions, and I'll have what we need to make sure you and the baby are set. He lowered his voice further, but I could still catch most of it. The prenup is in my favor. The accounts will be accessible. She trusts me with her financials already. After a short while, we separate amicably. I'll play the "it just didn't work out" card. Everyone will tell her, marriages fail all the time, at least you tried. She'll survive. She's resilient. Women like her always are. Resilient. Women like her. I wanted to punch through the wood. My blood roared in my ears. I almost didn't notice the light touch on my elbow. The waitress had slipped behind the divider with me, moving like a shadow. I flinched, nearly dropping my phone. She quickly pressed her finger to my lips, eyes wide, silently reminding me to keep quiet. She leaned in, her lips close to my ear. "Are you okay?" she breathed, the question absurd and huge at the same time. How could I be okay? "Record everything," she added under her breath. "You're going to need it." I swallowed hard, forcing my hand to steady around my phone. My recording timer ticked steadily in the corner of the screen. 3 minutes and change. It felt like hours. She hesitated, then whispered, "I didn't know about the baby. I've seen him here with her a lot, and when I heard about the rehearsal dinner booking on your name, Her voice cracked. "I couldn't let you walk in blind." Something in her tone cut through my haze. There was history there. pain. She wasn't doing this for drama. She was doing it like someone who knew what it felt like to be me. "How long?" I whispered back, the words scraping their way out of my throat. She glanced through the gap, then back at me. "Couple of months at least," she murmured. "They're here almost every week, always at that table. He booked it special for today." I stared through the sliver of space at the man I thought I was going to marry. The same man who, just last week, had sat on my couch, bare feet on my coffee table, talking about baby names for one day. The same man who'd told my mother, "I will always take care of her." The same man who was now planning my financial ruin over bread and water with someone else. My knees threatened to give out. The waitress's hand tightened around my arm, subtly keeping me upright. "If you need to sit, there's a little ledge just behind you," she whispered, "but don't stop recording. Not yet." I didn't sit. Some stubborn streak inside me refused to let my body collapse while he still thought I was blind. I kept listening. Have you ever reached the point where pain turns into clarity? Where the worst thing that could happen has already happened, and now all that's left is seeing it clearly? That's where I was. As I stood there, invisible and shaking, I realized this moment would decide everything that came next. Was I going to keep pretending, or was I, finally, going to believe my own eyes?
For a few long, endless seconds, I just stood there, pinned between the wood of the divider and the weight of his words, feeling like the ground beneath my entire life had just been quietly removed. I had two choices, and I knew it. Either I could do what I'd seen so many women do, including my mother, pretend I hadn't seen enough, tell myself I needed more context, go home, smooth my hair, and show up at the altar anyway. Or I could let this be the end of the lie. Have you ever felt that exact tipping point where one more second of pretending would break something in you that might never heal? The waitress still had a light grip on my arm. When she felt my breathing shift from ragged, panicked gasps to something slower, more controlled, she loosened her hold like she could sense that something inside me was hardening instead of collapsing. I watched him reach for the basket of bread, tear off a piece, and offer it to her with a little smile. It was such a normal, domestic gesture that if someone had taken a snapshot of them right then, it would have looked like any happy couple on any regular day. No one would have guessed that 2 feet away, his fiancé was watching her future burn down through an inch-wide gap in the wall. My thumb was still pressed to my phone, the red recording timer ticking steadily upward. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a practical, almost cold part of me started to wake up. This isn't just betrayal, that voice said. This is financial, legal, strategic. You need proof. My tears slowed, not because it hurt any less, but because my pain was starting to shift shape. It wasn't just raw anymore, it was sharpening into something else. Have you ever felt anger arrive, not like fire, but like ice? Not wild and explosive, but clean and precise, lining everything up. He took a bite of bread, chewed, then leaned back in his chair like a man discussing business, not lives. He said, "I already told you how this works. We get through next weekend, we smile for pictures, I sign the paperwork, the accounts get opened, the lines of credit increase. She's already added me as an authorized user on one of her cards." He laughed softly. She said, "We're building trust. You believe that?" The other woman didn't laugh this time. She said, "It still feels wrong. I know you said relationships are complicated, but this feels like scamming, you know? Scamming." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. He shrugged, casual. "It's not a scam if everyone gets something. She gets her wedding and her married status. I get a setup. In the end, we both walk away with what we want. She'll be fine. She's cuff." He paused, then added, almost proudly, "It's not like it's the first time I've done something like this." I went very, very still. If you'd pressed pause on me in that moment, you'd see nothing move but my eyes widening just a fraction and my hand tightening on the phone until the edges dug into my palm. The woman across from him blinked slowly. "What do you mean?" she asked. He waved a hand. Not exactly like this, he said, but I've been in, situations. A buddy of mine jokes that I have a type, women who are tired of being strong and single and just want stability. I come in, offer stability, we both get what we need. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. This is just a more efficient version. A more efficient version? He was talking about people, about me, like spreadsheets, like settlements and returns and exit strategies. I felt something in my chest click, like a lock turning. Never again. The thought came in clear, like bells in cold air. Not a wish, a decision. I thought about all the ways I'd bent myself to fit the role of chill, understanding fiancé, all the times I'd swallowed my questions about his schedule, his phone, his finances, because I didn't want to be nagging. All the nights I'd stayed up late on my laptop comparing venue packages and payment plans while he slept next to me, telling myself, this is what building a life together looks like. No, this was what building his life on my back looked like. Have you ever realized that the person you thought was rescuing you was actually the one holding your head underwater? The waitress's whisper brushed my ear again. "You okay to keep going?" she asked, barely audible. There were 100 true answers to that question. No, I'm not okay. No, I will never be the same. No, I'm not ready. But the only one that mattered right then was this. Yes, I breathed. Keep going means I don't marry him. She gave the slightest nod, respect in her eyes now, not pity. "Can you move a bit?" I whispered, "so I can hear better?" She shifted without drawing attention, casually wiping a non-existent smudge from the edge of the divider, adjusting a salt shaker on a nearby side table. To anyone else, she was just doing her job. To me, she was repositioning my window into the truth. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump. A group chat notification. My bridesmaids sending a meme about last week as a free woman. The irony hit so hard I almost laughed. It was like there were two timelines laid on top of each other. The one where I kept pretending and walked down that aisle, and the one where I let this moment blow it all up. Both were technically still possible. For a few more minutes, I could still choose. Have you ever felt your future branching out in front of you, knowing one path will hurt now and heal later, and the other will feel easier now and destroy you slowly? I unlocked my phone with my free thumb, trying to be subtle. With my recording still running, I slid my finger up and opened my messages. My best friend's name stared back at me from the top of the thread. I typed with one hand, the words clumsy but fierce. At restaurant. Caught him with pregnant girlfriend, recording everything. Don't freak out, we'll call later. I hit send before I could overthink it. A second later, 3 dots appeared. Then, what? Where are you exactly? Are you safe? I didn't answer. Not yet. I couldn't afford the emotional flood that would come with actually talking to someone who loved me. If I heard her voice, I might crumble. I needed to stay in this strange, clear-headed place just a little longer. He was talking again, more quietly now, but anger had sharpened my hearing. "You worry too much," he was saying to the other woman. "This is how the world works. Rich people do it all the time. They marry for money, for status, for connections. At least we're honest with each other about what we're doing." She frowned. "Are you?" she asked softly. He smiled, that disarming, boyish smile I once thought was proof of his goodness. "With you, always," he said. "Have I lied to you?" She hesitated. "You lied to her," she pointed out, "every day." He rolled his eyes. "That's different. You know women like her. They fall in love with their own story. If I'd told her, hey, I'm attracted to your ambition and your bank account, but I'm not sure I actually want to be with you forever, would she have said yes? No. So I gave her what she needed to hear, and she gave us what we need to build our life. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. There it was again, that twisted logic that tried to paint exploitation as mutually beneficial. I thought about how many times I'd waved away my discomfort with, all relationships are give and take. How many times I'd told myself, every man has flaws, at least he's here. I'd negotiated against my own peace like it was a coupon I could trade for a husband. Have you ever realized you've been bargaining with your own worth? The waitress shifted again, then whispered, "You can stop whenever you want. You've got enough." Enough. For my heart, maybe, but for what might come next, canceling contracts, legal battles, financial control damage, I knew enough was not a feeling. It was evidence. I thought about the leases with both our names, the vendors who had only ever talked to me, the joint account we were supposed to open next week once the marriage certificate made it official. I thought about how fast he was moving, like a man on a deadline. Because he was on a deadline. My deadline. 6 days. I realized something then that changed everything about how I saw myself in that moment. I was not powerless. I felt powerless, yes. I felt gutted and small and foolish, but feelings weren't facts. The facts were, my name was on most of the contracts. Most of the money had come from my accounts. I was the one who could still pull the emergency brake on this train before it crashed down the mountain. He needed my ignorance more than I needed his affection. Have you ever felt the moment you stop being the one begging and start being the one choosing? It's subtle, but when it happens, you feel it in your spine. I straightened just a little, still hidden. I wiped my free hand quickly under my eyes, smearing tears but clearing my vision. I watched him talk, watched the way he kept shaping a future around us, but us didn't include me, not really. I was just a step in his plan. That realization did something unexpected. It made me less afraid of losing him. Because how do you lose someone who never really saw you as a person to begin with? I zoomed in again, catching his face clearly as he said, "By this time next year, we'll be in a bigger place with the baby crawling around, and I won't have to work this hard. I'll have my own capital. I won't have to rely on anyone else ever again." Anyone else. Including me. He didn't know it yet, but that was about to become very, very true. I stopped the recording for a moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. The video saved, a little thumbnail appearing on my camera roll, a tiny, devastating file that held the destruction of my engagement, and, at the same time, the key to my escape. I immediately hit record again, just in case. Redundancy, backup. I wasn't leaving my future to chance anymore. Behind me, I felt the waitress shift, like she was about to say something. Instead, she slipped a folded napkin into my hand. I glanced down. On the inside, in quick, messy pen strokes, she'd written, "My name is Tasha. If you need a witness, I saw everything. Ask for me." Ask for me. A simple sentence, but in that moment, it felt like armor. I closed my fingers around the napkin, feeling the crinkle of paper against my palm like a promise. I wasn't alone. Someone else had seen. Someone else would back me up when people said, "Are you sure? Maybe you misunderstood. Weddings are stressful. Maybe you overreacted." Because you know they would. People always find ways to doubt a woman's pain, especially when the man in question is charming, well-spoken, and knows how to cry on cue. I glanced up again just as he leaned forward and said, "So next week, after the wedding, I'm going to suggest we consolidate everything. Savings, credit, investments. I'll tell her it's about trust, about building together. She eats that team stuff up. Once I'm on all the accounts officially, we're set." He smiled at her. "And then you can finally stop worrying. You and our baby won't have to stress about money ever again." The other woman exhaled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'm trusting you." Trusting you. I stared at him at the gap, at the man I had also said those words to again and again. I felt no urge anymore to convince her I existed, no urge to introduce myself as the fiancé. That wasn't my job. My job was to get myself out. I pressed stop on the recording one more time, making sure the second file saved. 2 videos, 2 angles of hell. I knew what I had to do next. I had to walk away from this divider, away from this restaurant, away from this version of my life, this man, this ring. I had to cancel a wedding. I had to call vendors, tell my mother, tell my friends. I had to face the embarrassment, the questions, the pitying looks. I had to uninvite 100 people from a party they'd already bought outfits for. I had to look at my bank statements and accept how much damage had already been done. And I had to do it without warning him first. Because any conversation I had with him, any screaming match, any scene I might make if I stepped out behind that divider right now, would give him a head start. Money moves faster than apologies. Have you ever realized that the loud, dramatic confrontation your heart wants is not the smartest move your future needs? It went against every instinct I had. I wanted to see his face when he realized I knew. I wanted him to feel my hurt, to feel my rage. I wanted witnesses. I wanted him small and exposed the way I felt small and exposed behind that divider. But another image pushed in front of that fantasy. Me at the bank 2 days later hearing, "Those funds have already been transferred." Me at a lawyer's office hearing, "It would have been easier if you'd come to us before you got married." Me a year from now telling the same story with a different ending, one where I went through with the ceremony because I didn't want to ruin everything so close to the day. No, I wasn't going to give him a wedding day to hide behind. I wasn't going to let him turn my fear of embarrassment into his safety net. I slid the phone into my bag, still unlocked, video saved. I closed my fingers around Tasha's napkin until it dug into my skin. My heart was still racing, but my mind was startlingly calm now. "I'm leaving," I whispered to her. "Do you want me to call someone for you, or security, or we can block his view while you slip out?" The thought of him seeing me right then sent a spike of adrenaline through me. I pictured his surprised face, the flicker of guilt quickly covered by charm, the careful lies, the fake confusion. No, I didn't want that scene. Not yet. I shook my head, barely. No, if he sees me, he'll know something's off. He'll start moving money, changing passwords. I need time. She nodded, jaw tight. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay. When I walk past, wait 5 seconds, then go straight to the side door. It leads to the parking lot. Fewer people will see you." She slipped away from me, reappearing seconds later on the other side of the divider with a water pitcher in her hand, playing her role perfectly. She refilled their glasses, smiled politely, exchanged a few meaningless words about the food specials. It was like watching a play from backstage, knowing you were the only one who'd read the real script. As she walked away from their table, she brushed her fingers along the edge of the divider again, a silent signal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I stepped back from the gap, my legs remembering how to move. Each step away from that window felt like peeling off a layer of skin. The sounds of the restaurant grew muffled and then distant as I followed the small hallway that led past the restrooms towards the glowing red exit sign at the side door. Have you ever walked away from something knowing that when you look back, it will no longer be your life, just your story? My hand reached for the door handle. It was cool and solid under my fingers. The world on the other side of that door was the same as it had been an hour ago. Same weather, same street, same sky. But I was not the same woman who had walked in. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the parking lot air, my heart pounding, my eyes burning, my future in pieces, and, for the first time in a long time, my fear and my self-respect standing on the same side. And that was the moment
I decided I wasn't going to be his victim. I was going to be his undoing. I didn't start crying until I reached my car. Inside the restaurant, I'd been frozen, operating on autopilot. But the second the door closed behind me and I was alone, the world crashed back in. The parking lot looked exactly the same as it had when I'd pulled up an hour earlier. Same cars, same cracks in the asphalt, same faint smell of exhaust and fried food. But I felt like I'd just crawled out of a building that had collapsed.
I opened the driver's side door, slid into the seat, and as soon as I pulled it shut, the first sob punched out of me so hard, I doubled over. Have you ever cried so hard you made no sound at first? Just these open-mouthed gasps, like your body's trying to remember how to breathe and break at the same time? I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Tears poured down my face, burning hot, dripping onto my hands, my lap, the leather. Images flashed like a strobe light behind my eyelids. Him on her stomach, the word hour, his smirk when he talked about my credit, the way he said women like her, like I was a category, not a person. I don't know how long I stayed like that, curled forward, shoulders shaking, my phone still buzzing somewhere in my bag. Long enough for the first wave of shock to run its course. Long enough for the rawest edge of the pain to scrape over me, leaving this weird, numb ache underneath. Eventually, my crying slowed. Not because it hurt less, but because my body simply ran out of whatever chemical fuels those kinds of explosions. My throat felt shredded, my face throbbed, my nose was completely blocked. I fumbled in my console for a napkin, found an old fast food one, and blew my nose loudly, half laughing at how pathetic I sounded. Have you ever caught a glimpse of yourself in the mirror in the middle of a breakdown and not even recognized the person staring back? I glanced up at the rearview mirror and saw a stranger. Eyes swollen and red, mascara smeared, lips trembling. The ring on my finger glittered mockingly as I wiped at my cheeks. For a second, I wanted to rip it off and throw it into the parking lot. But I didn't. Not yet. That ring was evidence, too. Proof I hadn't imagined this engagement, this investment, this almost life. I dug my phone out of my bag. Notifications covered the screen. The group chat, my best friend, even my mom had texted asking how the restaurant meeting went. I stared at her message for a long time. Everything okay, baby? Everything was not okay. Nothing was okay. But before I could respond to anyone, I knew I had to do something even harder than texting back. I had to re-watch the videos. Have you ever forced yourself to reopen the exact wound that's killing you, just so you can stitch it up right? My thumb hovered over the first video thumbnail. Some part of me whispered, "Don't. You lived it once. Isn't that enough?" Another part answered, "You need every second, every word. No one will believe how bad it was unless you can show them." I tapped play. The tiny screen filled with the image I'd just escaped. Him leaning in, smiling, touching her hand, touching her stomach. I heard my own heartbeat in the shaky audio. Then his voice, calm, calculating, talking about accounts and prenups and women like her. Talking about me. I watched the whole thing, eyes burning, fingers digging into the phone. When it ended, I played the second one. I listened to him say, "It's not like it's the first time I've done something like this," and my stomach turned all over again. I watched him promise her a life built on my back. If I hadn't already been sitting, that second video might have knocked me to the ground. When it finally stopped, my thumb lingered over the delete button for a half second, just long enough for me to realize how dangerous that impulse was. My shame wanted to erase the evidence, to pretend this awful version of him, of me, of us had never existed. But my survival refused. I backed the videos up to the cloud, then I emailed them to myself, then shaking, I texted them to my best friend with a single line, "Watch all of this. I'll call you in 5. Have you ever known that if you didn't loop someone else into your reality right away, you might talk yourself out of believing it later? I switched my phone to speaker, set it on my thigh, and finally called her. She picked up on the first ring. "Girl, what is..." Then she stopped. I heard the faint echo of the video playing on her end. A few seconds of silence, then, "Oh my God." Her voice dropped, heavy and cold. Where are you? I swallowed. In the car, outside the restaurant. Is he still in there? Yeah. I glanced at the building, the tinted windows hiding the scene I'd just escaped. He has no idea I saw anything. She was quiet for a beat. I could hear her breathing, the subtle movement as she probably paced her apartment. Okay, she said at last, slipping into that tone she only used when things were really bad. Listen to me. Do not go back in. Do not confront him. Do not text him. Not yet. I let out a bitter laugh. Trust me, I'm not trying to see his face right now. Good, because as much as I want you to snatch his soul out of his body, you need to protect yourself first. Money, contracts, everything. How much has he got access to? That question hit like a slap. I mentally scanned through accounts. Joint? Not yet. I hadn't actually opened the joint account we'd talked about. We were supposed to do it after the wedding. Authorized user? Yes, one credit card. The one I'd proudly handed him months ago when he said, "Let me help with some of the expenses sometimes." My bank login? No, I'd never given him that. But he knew enough of my personal information that with a marriage certificate, he could have walked into a bank and made a convincing case for shared finances. Have you ever realized how close you came to letting someone walk off with your future? He's an authorized user on one credit card. I forced myself to be factual. The rest is still just in my name. Most of the contracts have my info, not his, but my savings are low from deposits, and I've got outstanding balances from the dress, the photographer, the venue. My voice cracked. Okay, she said firmly. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to call that credit card company right now and remove him. Then you're going to call every vendor and tell them the wedding is off. Ask what deposits are refundable. Send them that video if you have to. Then you're going to go home, change your passwords, and put fraud alerts on your credit. You hear me? The sheer list made my head spin. I can't cancel a whole wedding in a day, I whispered. People are flying in. My mom. Your mom would rather comfort a heartbroken daughter than watch her walk into a legal scam in a white dress. She snapped. Then her tone softened. I know you, okay? You're already thinking about the embarrassment, the judgment, the whispers. Lishi couldn't even make it down the aisle, all that. Screw them. This is not about pride.
She was right. And underneath the humiliation, something in me knew it. Was I really going to sacrifice the next 5, 10, 20 years of my life just to save face for one day? Have you ever had to choose between looking strong and actually being strong? Okay, I said, voice barely more than a breath. Okay, I'll do it. Good. And listen, she added, send those videos to a second email, maybe your work one, and a USB if you can. Multiple places. Do not let this man talk you into doubting what you heard with your own ears. We hung up only because my battery had dropped to 9%, and I still needed it for calls. I plugged the phone into the car charger, took a breath that was more like a shudder, and pulled up the number for my credit card company. My fingers shook so hard I almost misdialed. In the endless tinny hold music that followed, my mind drifted, uninvited, to the voices that had always haunted me in the background. Not his, society's. The aunties who'd said, "You're too independent, that's why you're still single." The coworkers who'd joked, "You're married to your job." The ex who'd told me, "You act like you don't need a man for anything. It's a little emasculating." The whole narrative that Black women are supposed to be grateful for any love we get, no matter the terms, that we're lucky if someone chooses us at all, that we should lower our expectations, stop being so picky, accept that all men cheat and just pick the one who cheats respectfully. How many times had I watched women stay in mess because they didn't want to be the one who couldn't keep a man? Now I was the one who couldn't even get him to the wedding honestly. And yet, sitting in that car, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel so soon. The faintest thread of pride. Not because of what he'd done, that was all on him, but because I'd looked, I'd listened. I hadn't walked into that restaurant, smiled and talked about centerpieces, while my intuition banged on the door of my mind, begging to be heard. Have you ever been proud of yourself in the middle of the worst pain of your life? The customer service rep finally came on the line. I swallowed, explained that I needed to remove an authorized user immediately. I didn't tell her why. I just repeated, effective now. No more access, no more charges. She read me her script, clicked her buttons, and then, just like that, one of his lifelines to my wallet disappeared. Next, I logged into my banking app and moved what little remained in my checking account into a separate, less obvious savings pocket. I changed the password. I turned on every security feature I could find. Text alerts, two-factor authentication, transaction notifications. Then I did the same for my email, my cloud storage, everything. I felt a little paranoid, like I was preparing for war. But that was the thing I was finally willing to admit. This had been a kind of war all along. I just hadn't realized I was under attack. Have you ever looked back and seen every small hurt for the bullet wound it really was? For a moment, the task list in my head felt impossibly long. Cancel the florist, call the venue, tell the DJ, uninvite guests, face my mother, face his family, face my own reflection. I could feel panic nipping at the edges of my thoughts again, whispering, "It's too much. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you can fix this. Maybe you can postpone instead of cancel. Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds." I opened my videos one more time and fast-forwarded to the line where he said, "The relationship is over. She just doesn't know it yet." I let that sentence sink in like a stone. No, I wasn't overreacting. I was finally, belatedly, reacting correctly. I put the car in gear and pulled out of the parking lot, each flick once toward the restaurant door. For a second, I imagined him walking out right then, catching sight of my car, waving, maybe sending me a text, "Meeting ran long, babe. Can't wait to see you tonight." He had no idea his timeline had changed. He thought he had 6 more days to execute his plan. 6 days to the wedding. 6 days until he'd lock in legal access to me, my name, my credit, my future. He didn't know that in less than 6 hours, he'd be getting a very different kind of phone call. Have you ever felt the power of being the one who knows the truth first? Back at my apartment, the silence hit me like a wall. The dress bag hanging on the bedroom door, the shoes lined up neatly, the half-packed honeymoon suitcase on the chair. Evidence of a life I'd been carefully constructing, piece by piece, all about to be dismantled. I tossed my keys on the counter and slid down the kitchen cabinet until I was sitting on the floor, back against the cupboards, phone in my lap. I pulled up my contacts and hovered over the venue coordinator's number. My finger shook, hovering above call. Canceling meant admitting this was real. It meant making it official, not just in my heart and in my car, but in the world. It meant saying no more maybe. It meant saying the words out loud for the first time. The wedding is off. Have you ever felt the weight of a sentence press against your tongue, knowing once you release it, you can't take it back? I took a deep breath and pressed the button. The line rang once, twice, 3 times, and in that tiny slice of time, my mind whispered one last panicked question. Was I really ready to blow up everything for a truth I'd only known for an hour? The coordinator answered, "Hi, we're so excited to see you next week. How can I help?" I closed my eyes, felt my heart pounding, and finally spoke the words that would change everything. I need to cancel the wedding. How do you cancel a wedding without feeling like you're canceling your whole life? That's what ran through my head as I heard my own voice say, I need to cancel the wedding. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The venue coordinator, usually all cheer and sparkle, sounded stunned. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," she said carefully. "Can I ask, is it a postponement or postponement?" That word dangled there like a lifeline. I could almost see the easier version of the story forming around it. We had issues, we needed time, nothing to see here, folks. No need to burn it all down. Have you ever been tempted to downgrade your own disaster just so other people don't feel uncomfortable? I swallowed. "No," I said slowly. "It's not a postponement. The wedding isn't happening." Saying it out loud cracked something in me all over again. But it also did something else. It made it real. There was no going back now. The coordinator cleared her throat. "Okay, I understand. Let me pull up your contract." I listened to her type. Every clack of her keyboard felt like a nail in the coffin of the life I'd been planning. "Okay," she said after a moment, businesslike again. "Per your agreement, the initial deposit is non-refundable, but some of the catering cost can be partially reimbursed if we given at least 72 hours notice. Since your date is next week, we might be able to..." I closed my eyes. Money. Always, inevitably, money. "Do what you can," I said. "If you need documentation, I have it." I almost offered to send the video. I didn't. Not yet. This woman didn't need to see my humiliation to do her job, but knowing I had proof if anyone challenged my decision made me feel less small. We went through the boring, painful details, emails, amended invoices, updated statements. When I hung up, a portion of my savings was officially gone for good. A casualty of a war I didn't know I was fighting. But I was still breathing. I called the florist next, the photographer, the DJ. Each call required me to repeat some version of the same line. "The wedding has been canceled." Some people were kind, some were awkward. A few tried to fish for details. I kept it simple, personal reasons. "Are you sure?" one vendor asked gently. "Sometimes couples get cold feet, but they work through." "I'm sure," I cut in. My voice shook, but the words were firm. "It's not cold feet. It's a total reevaluation." Have you ever heard yourself sound stronger than you feel and realized you might eventually grow into that sound? When the immediate cancellations were done, I sat there on the kitchen floor, phone in my hand, staring at my mother's name. This was the call I dreaded most. Vendors were business. My mom was everything. How do you tell the woman who's been praying over your future husband since you were a child that the man you picked was planning to use you? I hit call before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm. "Hey, baby, how did the menu tasting go? Did they have that salmon you liked?" I almost lost it right there. Have you ever wanted to protect your parents from your pain, even though you're not a child anymore? "Mama," my voice broke on the second syllable. She went silent immediately. "What happened?" she asked, all her senses snapping to attention. I had to cancel the wedding," I whispered. "Okay," she said without a beat of judgment. Just that one word. "Okay. Tell me where you are." "Home." "I'm on my way." "You don't even know?" "I don't need to know yet. I just need to get to my child." By the time she knocked on my door 30 minutes later, I'd replayed the videos again, not to torture myself, but to anchor myself. Every time my brain tried to minimize what I heard, "He's stressed, he didn't mean it that way," I heard him talk about me like an investment. Every time my heart said, "Maybe there's another side," I heard him say, "The relationship has been over. She just doesn't know it yet." There was no other side. My mom stepped in, took one look at me, and opened her arms. I fell into them like I did when I was 8 and scraped my knees on the sidewalk. She held me tight, rocking us both slightly. I sobbed into her shoulder. "I'm sorry," I choked. "I failed. I picked wrong. I let this happen." She gripped my face in her hands and pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. "Stop,"
she said firmly. You did not fail. You caught a bullet before it hit you. That is not failure. That is God's mercy. Have you ever needed someone older, someone who's lived through their own storms, to reframe your disaster as deliverance? Between tears, between rewinding and replaying the worst parts, I told her everything about the waitress, the hiding, the talk of accounts and credit and women like her, the baby, all of it. She listened without interrupting, her jaw tightening, eyes darkening. When she finished, she sat back slowly, like she was physically absorbing the blow. "He said all that?" she asked quietly. "I have it on video," I said. Do you want to see it?" She hesitated, then nodded. I need to see the kind of man I almost called my son-in-law. We watched it together, twice. Her hand never left mine. When it ended, she exhaled sharply, as if she'd been holding her breath the entire time. "I knew something was off," she murmured quietly, "but I didn't want to be that mother who can't let her daughter be happy. I told myself, if she's smiling, don't you dare steal it from her with your fears." She shook her head, eyes glistening. "I should have pushed harder." "No," I protested, wiping my face. "I would have defended him. I did defend him. This is not on you." "It's not on you either," she said. "This is a grown man who makes choices. This is his character, not yours. You hear me?" I nodded, but some part of me still clung to the question, how did I not see? Have you ever blamed yourself for not predicting someone else's lies? Mom squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said suddenly. "Proud?" I almost laughed. "For what? Ruining a wedding?" "For walking away from a disaster before it walked you down the aisle. I stayed too long with your father because I didn't want to face this shame, the whispers, the looks, the what happened questions. You think I enjoyed starting over with you as a baby on my hip? No. But do you know what I regret most?" I shook my head. "Not leaving," she said. "Waiting. I waited until there was nothing left of me but bones. You're leaving while you still recognize yourself. That's courage." Her words sank into me slowly, like medicine that stings at first, but starts to soothe beneath the skin. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a whirlwind of calls and screenshots. My best friend came over after work, eyes blazing, armed with takeout and a notebook. Between bites of cold fries, we made lists, accounts to protect, people to inform, loose ends to tie. We also talked about the waitress, Tasha. "You need to talk to her again," my best friend said. "Get her story. If this turns into legal stuff, a witness who doesn't know you before today is gold." She was right. I still had Tasha's napkin in my pocket, crumpled and damp from my grip. Her name, scrawled in hurried ink, felt like a lifeline. I took a deep breath and called the restaurant asking for her by name. The hostess put me on hold, then a familiar voice came through, wary but steady. "Hello? Tasha? It's me, the fiancé." "Oh." I heard a chair scrape as if she'd stepped away from prying ears. "Are you safe?" No one had asked me that many times in one day as she had. "I am now," I said. I canceled the wedding." There was a beat of silence. Then, softly, "Good." "I wanted to say thank you," I blurted. "You didn't have to say anything. You could have just kept serving us drinks and let me find out the hard way 6 days after the ceremony." She let out a humorless laugh. "Been there. Did that. Never again." Her words made me sit up. "What do you mean?" I heard her exhale. "My sister," she said. "Different guy, same game. Promises, proposals, her paying for everything because he was between opportunities. Turns out he had a whole other life. She found out after the wedding, when the bills started showing up with his name and hers, and she realized he'd tanked her credit. She almost lost her apartment." My stomach twisted. "Is she okay now?" "Getting there," Tasha replied. "But watching her rebuild from nothing, watching her blame herself, I promised if I ever saw something like that happening again and could stop it, I would." Have you ever realized that a stranger's choice to step in for you was born from their own scars? If you ever need me to write something down or talk to someone, I will, she continued. "I saw him, I heard him, I've seen him here for months with her." "Thank you," I whispered. I might take that up on you." When I hung up, I felt something new settle over me. This wasn't just my story anymore. There were patterns here, behaviors, a type of man who preyed on a type of woman, women like my mother, like Tasha's sister, like me, women who took care of ourselves so well that no one expected anyone else to take care of us right. "So, what's next?" my best friend asked, flipping her notebook shut. "Are you going to tell him you know, or just send him a wedding-canceled email with a copy of the videos attached and block him on everything?" The petty part of me loved that second option, but another part, the one that had heard him brush off harm like it was just how the world works, knew a quiet exit wouldn't be enough. Not because I needed drama, but because I needed accountability. Have you ever known that if you didn't confront someone with who they really are, they'd just move on to the next person and do it again? "I have to tell him," I said slowly, "but I'm not doing it alone. And I'm not doing it where he can twist it into a lover's quarrel story." We spent the next hour crafting a plan. He was expecting me to come to his place that evening to go over last-minute details. Instead, I texted, "We need to talk about the rehearsal dinner. Meet me at Mom's at 7. He replied almost instantly, "Everything okay?" I stared at the screen for a long, tense second. Then I typed, "No." No context, no emoji, just that. No. Being honest in that one-word answer felt like the bravest thing I'd done all day. I showed my mom and best friend the text. "If he has half a brain," my friend muttered, "he's sweating right now." We didn't have to wait long to find out. At 6:58, there was a knock at my mother's front door. My heart started racing. I hadn't seen his face since before the restaurant. Part of me still remembered him as my fiancé, the man who made jokes about my bad dancing, who fell asleep with his head in my lap during movie nights, who whispered, "I can't believe I get to marry you," when he thought I was almost asleep. Another part, the part fortified by hours of replayed audio, remembered him as something else entirely, a man plotting a financial extraction. He knocked again, this time calling my name. My mother squeezed my shoulder. "Do you want me here?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "And her," I nodded toward her best friend. "I want witnesses this time." Have you ever walked into a confrontation knowing you're not the one who should be ashamed? I opened the door. He stood there in jeans and a button-down, hair styled just so, cologne drifting in ahead of him. For a split second, his face softened with relief when he saw me. Then he clocked my expression, the set of my jaw, the two women sitting in the living room behind me, and something in his eyes flickered. "Hey," he said slowly, "what's going on?" I stepped aside. "Come in, we need to talk." He walked in, glancing around like the room had changed since the last time he'd been there. Maybe it had. The furniture was the same, but the energy was different. There was no more performance here, no more future husband role for him to play. We sat, him on the edge of the armchair, me on the couch between my mother and my best friend. It wasn't accidental. I wanted him to feel outnumbered, because in this space, he was. "You're scaring me," he said, forcing a chuckle. "Is everything okay with the venue? Did something go wrong at the restaurant?" I tilted my head. "Why would you think something went wrong at the restaurant?" His jaw tightened, just barely. "I don't know. That's where you were earlier, right?" Have you ever watched someone lie with their whole body, the way their eyes slide away, their shoulders hunch, their hands twitch? I saw it all now, like I'd been given a new pair of glasses. I took my phone out, placed it on the coffee table between us. His gaze flicked to it, then back to me. "What's that?" "You tell me," I said. My voice sounded very calm to my own ears. It surprised me. "What would you think would make me cancel the wedding 6 days before the date?" His mask slipped for half a second, panic flashing across his face before he smoothed it away. "Cancel?" he laughed, but it was hollow. "Come on, babe, don't joke like that." "I'm not joking." I turned the phone so the screen faced him.
tapped the first video, and hit play. His own face filled the screen. His own voice began to speak, slightly tinny through the tiny speakers, but unmistakable. Once the wedding is over and everything goes through, it'll be easier to maneuver. His complexion shifted, first a flush, then a sudden pallor. He reached for the phone instinctively. I pulled it back before he could touch it. "Don't," I said. He sat back, eyes darting between me, my mother, and my friend as the audio continued. Every ugly word he said at that table poured into my mother's living room. The jokes about my generosity, the talk of accounts and credit limits, the phrase, "women like her," the line about our relationship being over without my knowledge. It was like watching his mask crack in real time. Have you ever seen someone realize they're fully, completely exposed? When the video reached the part where he rested his hand on the other woman's stomach and said, "Our baby," my mom inhaled sharply. My best friend muttered something under her breath that I'm pretty sure God will forgive her for later. I let the video run almost to the end before I stopped it. The room was heavy with silence. He swallowed. This is out of context," he said finally. "You're taking things—" "Context?" I cut in. My voice was sharper now, anger pushing through the calm. "What context makes 'I'm marrying her for her money and then leaving' sound better?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I was just venting. You know how guys talk. I was stressed about the wedding, about finances. I said some stupid things to impress a client." "A pregnant client?" my friend snapped. "Who you called baby?" He flinched. You must have misheard. I didn't just hear it, I recorded it. Twice at the table where you and your pregnant girlfriend sat, at the restaurant you booked for our rehearsal dinner. He stared at me, shock and calculation battling in his eyes. "You followed me?" he accused. "You were spying on me? That's insane." "A restaurante waitress saw your regular little date and decided I deserved to know. She told me to hide. She told me to watch. So I did. And now I know exactly who you are." Have you ever watched someone search for the charm that used to get them out of everything and finally realize it won't work here? He switched tactics so fast it gave me whiplash. His shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with moisture. "Okay," he said, voice low. "Okay, I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared of commitment, of not having enough. When I met you, you had it all together, and I felt small. So I made bad choices. I lied. But it doesn't mean I don't love you." He leaned forward, reaching toward me. "Babe, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll cut her off. Don't you dare touch me," I said quietly. He froze. My mother's voice cut in, calm but ice cold. "Son, you didn't just mess up. You ran a play. You saw my daughter as a shortcut to the life you wanted, and you were willing to humiliate her publicly and destroy her financially to get it. Don't stand in my living room and call that love." He turned to her, eyes wide, as if only just remembering she was there. "Ma'am, with all due respect—" "Respect?" she repeated. "You don't know the meaning of the word." He looked back at me, panic rising again. "You're letting them turn you against me," he said. "We've built so much together." "What exactly did we build together?" I asked. "I built a wedding. I built a financial foundation. You were planning to strip mine. What did you build?" He opened his mouth, shut it, then went for anger. "So that's it. You're just going to throw us away over one mistake?" "This wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern. This was a plan. You said it yourself. It's not the first time you've done something like this." He blinked. He hadn't realized that part was on the recording, too. "Who else?" I asked, voice suddenly very quiet. "Who else did you run this on? How many women like me have you targeted?" He bristled, defensive. "You're twisting my words. You always do this. You overanalyze everything until—" "No," I said. "What I used to do was underanalyze. I used to smooth over every rough edge you showed me because I didn't want to be alone again. That ends today." Have you ever heard yourself set a boundary so clearly that even the person who's been stepping over it for months knows they're done?
He stared at me, breathing hard. "So what now?" he demanded. "You think you can just walk away clean? You've told everyone about the wedding. Think about how you're going to look. 6 days before, people are going to talk. They're going to assume you did something. You're willing to throw your reputation away because of some waitress and some videos?" I almost laughed. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked. "You're trying to weaponize my fear of embarrassment to keep me here. You don't get to do that anymore." I leaned forward, meeting him head on. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "The wedding is canceled. Venues, vendors, they all know. I've removed you from my accounts. You will not contact me, my family, or my friends to explain your side. If you try to spin a story that damages my reputation, I will send these videos to everyone who matters, including your job and your family." His eyes flashed. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said. "I was willing to protect your image once because I thought you were worth it. Now, I will protect myself." My best friend slid a piece of paper across the table. "That's a list of things you've charged on her card as an authorized user. We've already flagged anything she didn't approve. You can either pay those back quietly, or we can let the bank and possibly law enforcement get involved. Your choice." He snatched up the paper, scanning it, color draining from his face. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he muttered. "People break up all the time. You don't have to threaten me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm setting terms. You like terms, don't you? It's just business, remember? Have you ever turned someone's own dehumanizing logic back on them and felt for once not guilty about it?" He sat there, cornered, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. For a flicker of a moment, I saw behind the mask a scared, grasping man who'd built his identity on manipulating women who deserved better. For the first time, I didn't feel a single urge to fix him. My compassion had finally turned inward. "I loved you, or at least I loved who I thought you were, but I love myself more than any fantasy now. That's what's changed." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. He'd never met this version of me, the one who wasn't bending, explaining, cushioning his consequences. "You're going to regret this," he said at last, a last-ditch attempt to scare me. "You're not going to find someone else who—" "Good," I cut in. "I'm not looking for someone else right now. I'm looking for myself." Silence dropped heavy between us. He stood up abruptly, anger flickering across his face. "Fine," he spat. "Call it off. Make your little power move, but don't come crawling back when you realize you overreacted." "You won't have my number if that day ever comes," I said. "Now get out of my mother's house." He looked like he wanted to say more, to throw one last verbal dart, but my mother's unwavering stare stopped him. He grabbed his keys, his pride in shreds, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back. For a heartbeat, I saw the man I once knew, the charming smile, the soft voice. "I did love you," he said, in my own way. I held his gaze. "Your way isn't love, it's hunger." He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Have you ever felt a door close and in the same moment felt a weight lift off you that you didn't even know you'd been carrying? I exhaled, a long, shuddering breath I felt in my bones. My mom pulled me into her arms. My best friend wrapped hers around both of us. For the first time since that waitress grabbed my wrist, I let my body go completely limp, knowing I was held. In the days that followed, there were still so many battles, calls to extended family, whispers, questions, but that night, in that living room, one war ended. I was no longer fighting to convince a man to choose me. I was fighting to stay chosen by myself. For the first few days after that confrontation, time moved strangely. Some moments dragged, each second heavy with what-ifs and why-didn'ts. Other moments blurred together. Phone calls, texts, canceled plans, returned gifts. Like my life had become a slideshow someone else was clicking through too fast. Have you ever had a week where your entire identity feels like it's under renovation? One day, I was a bride-to-be posting centerpieces in a group chat. The next, I was the woman sending a mass message. "The wedding has been canceled. Thank you for your love and understanding."
The replies came flooding in. Some were simple. "Oh no, are you okay?" Others were blunt. "What happened?" A few surprised me. "I'm proud of you." Those last ones usually came from women a little older, a little quieter, the ones who'd seen some things and recognized the courage in walking away instead of the failure. Most of the men said some version of, "Wow, that's wild. Let me know if you want to talk." But I didn't want to talk to them. I barely wanted to talk to anyone. Some nights I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, my mind playing two movies at once. In one, I was walking down the aisle to him, smiling for photos, cutting cake, thinking I'd made it. In the other, I was exactly where I was now, alone in my apartment, wedding dress still in the garment bag, ring sitting on the dresser like a paperweight for a story that ended early. Have you ever grieved something you were glad you lost? It's confusing. Grief doesn't always wait for your approval. It doesn't care that your brain knows you dodged a scam, an emotional car crash, a lifetime of quiet resentment. Your heart just knows it loved someone who turned out to not be real. I missed the version of him I'd built in my head. The man who wanted to spoil me, the partner who said, "We're a team," the fiancé who texted me goodnight from late meetings that I now knew were not meetings at all. I had to remind myself, over and over, you are not mourning him, you are mourning the fantasy. It helped, sometimes. I decided early on not to stalk him online. No checking his socials, no late night scrolling through photos of him, no trying to see what he posted after the fallout. But life has a way of delivering information whether you ask for it or not. 2 weeks after the canceled wedding date, my best friend forwarded me a screenshot from a mutual acquaintance. It was a blurry picture of him in a grocery store parking lot arguing with the pregnant woman. Her hands were flying, his face twisted. The caption, "Whew, that's messy." I stared at the photo for a long time. I didn't feel joy, not really. Just a deep, tired confirmation that chaos follows the people who create it. I didn't reach out to her directly. Part of me wanted to say, "You weren't the real one either. I saw you. I know he lied to you too." But another part of me knew she was on her own painful journey with hormones and heartbreak and decisions to make that didn't involve me. A month later, I got my update anyway. Tasha texted me in the middle of a Tuesday. "You're not going to believe this. Pregnant girl came in alone today, sat at the same table, asked for me." My heart jumped. "What happened?" I typed back. She called instead of replying by text. I showed her. Not your face, not your voice, just enough of the audio to hear what he said about both of you. She cried, hard. Then she said, "Thank you for not letting me raise a child with a man like that. She's moving back with her mom. She said to tell you she's sorry." Sorry. I didn't realize I'd been waiting for that word until I heard it. Have you ever forgiven someone you've never met in person just because you both survived the same storm from different sides? I wasn't mad at her anymore. How could I be? We were just two women orbiting the same black hole, pulling ourselves free in different directions. What surprised me most in the weeks after wasn't how other people reacted. It was how I reacted to myself. I thought I'd drown in shame, that I'd look in the mirror and see only the woman who almost married a man who used her. I thought I'd hear that little voice saying, "You're stupid, you should have known. This is what you get for wanting too much." But something else happened. In therapy, because yes, I went, and no, I'm not ashamed to say it, I started saying the worst things I believed about myself out loud. Things like, maybe I ignored the signs because I was desperate. Maybe I thought this was my last chance. Maybe I was afraid, as a black woman in her 30s, that another good man wouldn't come along. My therapist didn't flinch. She just asked, "And what if all of that is true? Does that make you deserving of exploitation, of being scammed, of being duped on purpose?" I knew the answer when she asked it. "No," I said. "So, say it, out loud." It felt ridiculous at first, but I did it. I didn't deserve to be used. Again. I didn't deserve to be used. Again. I didn't deserve to be used.
Have you ever felt your own voice become a lifeline back to yourself? Week by week, small things shifted. I took off the ring and put it in a box. My mom wanted me to sell it, but for now it sits in the back of a drawer, a reminder, not of him, but of the line I finally drew. I opened my banking app and saw green instead of red, not because the money magically fixed itself, some of it was gone for good, but because the bleeding had stopped. I wasn't losing any more of myself by the day. I started doing things just for me again, not for the wedding, not for our future, not for the couple we're building, just me. I went back to yoga class after skipping for months. The instructor, a tiny woman with a voice like a lullaby, said, "Set an intention for your practice." I closed my eyes and whispered, "To stop abandoning myself." Have you ever realized the person who's been betraying you the longest is you every time you ignore your own intuition? I had to sit with that. It didn't excuse what he did, not even close, but it gave me somewhere to direct my power now that he was gone. I couldn't change his character. I could change the space I gave people like him in my life. And let me tell you, reclaiming that space is addictive. The first time a man asked me out after all this, my stomach clenched. Not from butterflies, from alarm. Every part of me wanted to say, "Nope, not doing that again. I'm good with Netflix and my plant babies, thanks." But another part whispered, "It's not about never trusting again. It's about trusting you will leave when you see what you need to see." I went on the date. Nice restaurant, good lighting, easy conversation. When he put his phone face down on the table out of habit, I noticed. When he talked about his ex, I listened. When he joked about women being gold diggers, I felt my entire body go tense. That little intuitive voice, she was no longer a whisper. She was a full-throated singer in my head. I didn't go on a second date with him. And for the first time in my dating life, I didn't feel guilty about being too picky. I felt protective of my peace. Have you ever realized your standards weren't too high? Your tolerance was just too low. As the months passed, people slowly stopped asking about the canceled wedding. New gossip came along, new engagements, new scandals. The world moved on faster than I thought it would. My mother never stopped reminding me, a bad marriage is so much louder than a canceled wedding. I saw it everywhere once I started looking, in coworkers whispering about husbands who stayed out all night, in older women at church whose eyes went flat when their husbands cracked jokes at their expense, in social media posts that screamed, "couple goals," while the captions bled exhaustion. Now, when someone posts, "We've had our ups and downs, but love conquers all," I don't automatically envy them. I wonder what downs they're swallowing for the sake of that photo. I didn't tell this story to the world right away. It lived in quiet conversations at first, with my cousin, who was engaged and uneasy, with a coworker who said, "He wants me to add him to my accounts, but something feels off," with a friend of a friend who DM'd, "I heard what happened. Can I ask you something?" Each time I shared it, each time I said, "A waitress told me to hide and watch," and 5 minutes later, everything changed, I watched other women's eyes widen, then soften, then harden with their own recognition. Have you ever noticed how many of us have that moment, the one where someone or something pulls the curtain back, and yet we still feel alone in it? Eventually, I decided I didn't want my story to live only in whispers. Depending on where you're watching this, maybe you don't know my name. You don't need to. What you need to know is that I was ready to marry a man who saw me as a means to an end, and I walked away 6 days before the wedding because a stranger cared more about my future than the person I was about to marry did. That's the sickest part, isn't it? That a woman in an apron who'd never met me saw danger and acted, while the man I'd slept next to for a year saw my trust as a resource to mine. That doesn't make me stupid. It makes him small. It makes her brave. It makes me awake. So, what did I actually learn? Not in an Instagram quote way, in a real sitting on the kitchen floor with puffy eyes way. I learned that fear will glue you to the wrong person if you let it. Fear of being alone, fear of looking foolish, fear of starting over. But I also learned that fear can be repurposed. Fear of losing myself is stronger now than fear of losing someone else. Fear of repeating my mother's story is louder than fear of being the subject of family gossip. Fear of waking up one day and realizing I betrayed myself for a ring, that one keeps me honest with me.
Have you ever thought the strong black woman thing meant you had to endure everything, when really it can mean you refuse to endure what breaks you? I used to resent that label, strong, like it meant I wasn't allowed to be soft, to be chosen, to be taken care of. Now I've reframed it. Strong doesn't mean I never fall for the wrong person. Strong means when I see the truth, I don't stay. Strong doesn't mean I never cry over love. Strong means I don't let that love bankrupt my spirit or my future. I wouldn't pretend I'm grateful this happened. I would have preferred to learn these lessons without an almost wedding and a stack of non-refundable invoices. But I am grateful for one thing. I'm grateful I found out in time. Time to cancel the cake. Time to change the seating chart of my life. Time to choose myself back. So if you're watching this and you feel that ache in your chest, that whisper that says, something's wrong, and you keep calling it stress or cold feet, ask yourself, am I protecting my relationship or am I protecting my fantasy? Am I staying because it's good or because I'm afraid of what leaving will say about me? And if one day a stranger grabs your wrist and says, hide quick and just watch, I hope you listen. Not because every surprise is a betrayal, but because you deserve to know the truth about the person you're tying your life to. You deserve to look back at yourself years from now and say, even when it hurt, I chose me. In the end, the biggest plot twist of my almost wedding story wasn't his betrayal. It was the fact that, for the first time, I didn't betray myself.